Okay, hi everyone who's joined the motivation room. Our first speaker is Kevin Shattock, so I will let Kevin introduce himself and fire on with the talk so that we'll be the room that's going on time. Okay, fire away, Kevin.
I'm hoping you've got my screen a little thumbs up just to see you've got my size. Excellent. Thank you for the opportunity to present this morning. For those that don't know me, my name is Kevin Shattock. I'm currently the head of athletic development at the Grammar School at Leeds. So this presentation is informed through my current research practitioner journey, in which I'm a professional doctorate candidate at the Carnegie School of Sport, Leeds Beckett University, where I'm supervised by Professor Kevin Till and Dr. Tom Mitchell. My thesis is exploring a biopsychosocial approach to athlete development in the strength and conditioning environment. So starting off with why I chose that, for most listening and viewing today, they'll recognise the sports participation, like any other aspect of human development, is influenced by a host of integrating factors, and the selection and classification of these is probably a matter of their judgment and what they're seeing on a day-to-day basis within their coaching practice. The biopsychosocial approach has become an increasingly popular way of characterising human development, which posits the dynamic interaction between biological, psychological, and social factors, all of which play a significant role in human functioning. So for this talk, I'm going to focus on a number of things I've done in terms of the psychosocial environment to explore athlete motivation and how those methods and strategies have improved physical performance. At the end, as the previous, I will have some take-home key messages, but on certain slides, I'll also ask a rhetorical question, just to prompt as a self-reflection for yourselves in case of what you're doing, in case what you're doing in terms of your delivery. So this is a picture I'm sure we're all familiar with, and athletes need to be highly motivated over a long period of time in order to train at the required frequency, intensity, and volume in order to enable the physiological adaptations, strength, power, speed that coaches like myself are looking to create and develop. And athlete motivation can be influenced by the key social agents, coaches, teammates, peers, and parents, which you may well have termed or hear termed as motivation climate, which is often linked to achievement goal theory, which is Ames and Nichols. So the motivational climate reflects the features of that environment and whether it's task or ego orientated in terms of that goal structure. And recent studies, Abdullah 2016, Gillette 2009, Gomez Lopez 2013, have shown motivation to be linked to sports performance. And Clancy et al. In 2016 reported in their review, motivation was a fundamental construct for the precise analysis of the athlete's behaviour, training process, and performance. So therefore, establishing methods that enhance that motivational climate for athletes is important for coaches. So again, the first rhetorical question or take-home message I'm going to throw out there is, in your current practice, how often do you consider or plan sessions with motivation in mind? So for me, in my role as an S&C coach, essentially the purpose is to plan, deliver, and review physiological preparation of athletes, resulting in sport-specific outcomes. And in recent decades, coaches, professionals, and research investigators have identified the main performance indicators so that we can start incorporating that within the training process to improve performance. And recently, Till and colleagues 2019 presented this conceptual framework for decision making to try and assist in that process. And it's based upon the premise of the decisions made by S&C coaches as well as technical coaches. I'm using S&C because that's my domain. How they create their coaching interventions, and in this scenario, how am I creating a motivational climate for the athletes? That framework was inspired by MIR 2015 and the coaching, planning, practice and reflection framework, which is on the screen now. The framework encourages athletes to explore the relationship between coaching objectives, training activities, behavioural strategies, and athlete engagement. And it's about a deliberate planning, manipulation, and alignment of the training activity structure and behavioural strategies to maximise that athlete engagement and develop those opportunities in that environment, and in this specific sense, the motivation to perform. So again, looking at what are you doing in terms of your practice to be deliberate in creating that psychological intervention or that insight that we're talking about this morning, and how you can continue to drive that performance. So again, another self-reflection prompt. How often are you reflecting, analysing your own coaching behaviours and impact on athletes? So on the screen, I'm sure many will recognise this theory, this infographic, self-determination theory, and developed by Decky and Ryan, and it looks to dive deep into why athletes are motivated and the three things within it that you can do as a coach to help drive that internal motivation. So we're going to look at autonomy and relatedness and a couple of things that I've done within my own coaching practice to try and develop that internal motivation within the environment and with the athletes. And again, just another self-reflecting prompt. Looking at this infographic, are you co-creating? Are you working in partnership with your athletes? Or are you merely instructing them when you deliver? So thinking about autonomy, and this is a system and approach that I've used in season where Saturday to Saturday or performance to performance is absolutely key. So we've used a traffic light system, red, amber, green. And we've been allowing the athletes to choose the sessions that they want to complete. For example, we've played on a Saturday and it's now Monday or Tuesday and we're back in with training. Some athletes may have fully recovered if they were a substitute and didn't play the full 80, 90, 60 minutes, whatever performance it was. Some may have played a full game and had a really hard game and they're not fully recovered yet. So we're using a traffic light system to give them the autonomy. And this is based on the athlete self-reporting measures. If they scored as a red, they were assigned or encouraged to take part in an active recovery session. If there's one or two red flags, shall we say, and they're scored in orange, we look to manipulate the session to either reduce the volume and or the load or possibly provide off-peak conditioning. If their athlete self-reporting measures indicated that they had fully recovered, energy levels were high, etc., then they would be assigned their normal training, their normal sets and reps. So again, the reason we're doing this is athletic performance may be dependent on two potentials. One, the psychological. What are they arriving with at the session? You know, DOMs, energy levels, their nutrition, their sleep. Is that impacting their mental state, as well as the physiological. So how can we create the social conditions, the social, environmental, and that autonomy support within that training environment to allow that mechanism of transference to support, number one, well-being, but number two, the physiological adaptations I'm looking for as an S&C coach. And again, an infographic many may well have come across from package 1, hopefully I've said that correctly, and just looking at where that autonomy support comes in. So I've looked at the athletic potential of the group, of the squad, based on what happened on a Saturday of the performance. I've drawn up a number of sessions, training considerations, in terms of what I want, also what the head coach wants, and then started to look at how I can create that autonomy that allows players to choose what they feel they should be doing based on a number of factors, which will then hopefully transfer into the psychological well-being, but also that physical and physiological transference that we're talking about. Another thing we've explored is relatedness, and how can we create the environment where athletes themselves drive competition, drive motivation. And this is a study that I'm just currently writing up. And we looked at how the session or the task design could influence motivation and performance. So there was 5 sessions. Session number 1, they worked purely as an individual. They completed 60 seconds of an exercise. On the next slide, I'll show you what one of those looks like. And we recorded how many reps they completed during that 60 seconds. The second session, they worked in a pair, and we looked at the difference there. Third session, again, they worked in a pair, but one person in that pair was 20% stronger. And we based that off previous fitness test data that we had. Session number 4, they worked towards a leaderboard. All they knew to get on the leaderboard was the name and the position. They weren't given any other feedback. And then session 5 was they were given full transparency. They knew how many reps they needed to get on that leaderboard, where that placed them, etc., etc. So that was one of the exercises that was recorded in terms of the reps of sledgehammer strikes. They had to do that for 60 seconds. And again, we had a video camera set up to record the reps later on. And here's the rough data of those. So again, when people are working as an individual, yeah, roughly the mean was about 40 reps in the standard deviation there. As you can see, as the sessions were changed and manipulated, there was differences in the performance across those 60 seconds of the amount of reps that they did. We also looked at keg swings as well. We also monitored motivation pre and post session, again, so we can analyze those things as well. I saw this quote on Twitter the other day, and it's from Dan Abrahams, who does a lot of stuff in psychosocial, and I would encourage you to check his work out. Again, just a take-home message of, before you start thinking about the X's and O's, as the Americans would call it, or the technical, tactical element, start picturing what experience you want your athletes to have. So in this scenario, how am I going to motivate my athletes in season, week to week, when they're coming in fatigued, etc., etc. From there, I can start planning, right, do I need to put them in pairs? Do I need to use a leaderboard? Does this person need to work as an individual? Yeah, so starting to think of the psychosocial first before the physical comes into play. And then just some take-home messages. So first and foremost, one of my key coaching concepts is the 5 W's. What works for who, in what context, and why. So again, the study that I've done with 5 different task designs, I could start looking at individuals, knowing what worked for them. So some people really enjoy having a leaderboard. Some people might enjoy working as a pair. Some people on some weeks might just want to be as an individual. So what is working for them? Again, start understanding the psychological as well as the physical needs of the group. What do I need to do to create that environment that's going to inspire the athletes that I work with? Can I incorporate the group and peer activities, again, to drive that competitive nature that we all know athletes have? How am I providing autonomy support through feedback, through task design? Can I create a little bit of competition within the group so they're driving each other? And if I am working with individual performance, how can I make that identifiable within a much larger group? Thank you for listening. And if anyone has any questions or requires any clarification of any of the content, please feel free to ask.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Kevin. That was very interesting. Some very nice applied ways to integrate the self-determination theory. Really enjoyed that. Does anyone have any questions? Or question? Time for a question? Oh, anyone? Okay, I'll ask a question, Kevin. Oh no, Tom. Tom, you beat me to it. On you go, Tom.
Yes, hope you can hear me. What I was really interested in is when you, as a coach, from the outside, look at people's readiness to train, and you, inside, disagree with their readiness. They might say, "Yes, I'm really tired," and you've actually looked and thought, "I don't know if you are." How do you deal with that conflict?
Good question. Thank you for that. It again depends on your environment. If you are in a full-time professional environment, you may have some tests that you would perform that are going to give you some objective data in which to work with. For us, we used athlete self-reporting measure, so it was subjective. And you would hopefully think that those athletes are going to be honest with you and honest with yourself. It's probably establishing a longitudinal data where, how long have I worked with this athlete? Are they brand new in pre-season? Have I worked with this athlete for 2 or 3 years? What is their baseline data? What am I used to seeing? What's their body language suggestion? What questions do I want to ask to try and draw out more information? I think it's, that coach's eye that we often talk about will go a long way, especially if you have an established relationship with that person in terms of what am I saying, what are you telling me, and do they match? And hopefully you're both honest with each other as to where they are. If you want to, and you're second guessing yourself, some form of objective data, a counter movement jump is quite popular within the S&C world, to have a look at what is their force production like in terms of, are they where they say they are in terms of training readiness.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, Kevin. And right on time. So that's fantastic. Well done. Thank you. And I will now hand over to Gareth Jowett, who will talk about perfectionistic reactivity. Very exciting.
Morning.